You've told us a little bit about US support for Pakistan. What kind of response have you received from the rest of the international community? In the past, we've often seen that there's a substantial gap between aid pledges and actual aid disbursements. Is it likely to happen in this particular instance?
Well, we are always concerned about pledges outstripping actual commitment and disbursement. But we must acknowledge that many countries have been generous. Japan has provided helicopters, so has the United Arab Emirates. This is one of those moments when Pakistanis can make a distinction between friendly nations that really care and nations and governments that basically talk the talk but do not walk the walk. That said, some governments have also reallocated prior allocations of budgets for aid to Pakistan. They have advanced them to give them for the relief purpose. Our view is that that reallocation does not count, because what you're doing is you're saying, well, the money we had put in our budget to build a school in Pakistan, we can give that money to you for aid relief, but then you won't build the school. That is not something that we are looking upon very favorably. That said, we are coordinating, and all our embassies, all our governmental and non-governmental organizations are working with many, many nations, from China to Saudi Arabia to all the European nations, Japan, Turkey, Iran, even India have come forth with offers of assistance. And assistance from many of these countries is being channeled bilaterally, and in some cases it's coming through the United Nations.
How can Washingtonians and people from around the world get involved in relief and reconstruction efforts?
People who want to get involved with relief and reconstruction efforts should examine and check out their own role and what they can possibly do by going to the Pakistan Embassy website. There are several non-governmental organizations, including the United States, the American Red Cross, Mercy Corps, Islamic Relief, many organizations that are engaged in Pakistan. Then the United Nations High Commission for Refugees has a program through which they're also raising money for and allocating funds to Pakistan's flood affectees. Washingtonians can, depending on their own capacity, those who can donate money should donate money. Those who can contribute by being volunteers should look at the possibility of going there. But everybody needs to understand that this is a major human tragedy. The casualties, the number of people who actually died in this flood, are less than the people who died in the earthquake of 2005 or the tsunami. But the number of people who have been affected, whose life has been disrupted, is bigger than the number of people affected by the tsunami, the earthquake of Pakistan, and the Haiti earthquake put together. And that is why people should focus on this. Usually, when you have many people dying in front of you, you respond much more quickly. But the fact of the matter is that death is not the only tragedy. The tragedy of dislocation, of being rendered homeless, of not being able to have a regular life is a massive tragedy, and people need to bear that in mind while making contributions. The Pakistani Embassy is available for channeling the support and the contribution of all Washingtonians and beyond in the United States.
We've seen an outpouring of support following the Haiti earthquake. In the media, it's been widely reported that people are less forthcoming with donations following the Pakistani floods because of fears that their donations might end up in the wrong hands. The government has banned militant groups from disbursing aid in affected areas, but how is the government enforcing this?
Well, first of all, I think that the media as a whole focuses more on the bad news than on the good news. So we have a culture, and in case of Pakistan, it has been going on for a long time. Many people have covered the political consequences or supposed political consequences of the earthquake, of the flooding, long before they even covered the flooding. You haven't heard the human story of the floods first, which is what it should have happened. In case of Haiti, nobody started talking about the political consequences of the Haiti earthquake, whereas in Pakistan, even Pakistan's own media, of which I'm very critical, because they get lost into the woods of politics much more. So they created a feeling, but it's never been an issue. For example, if somebody donates water purification tablets, how can water purification tablets be used for any other purpose? How can tents that are meant to house refugees be used for any other purpose? I think this is just one of those, it's a straw man. It's an artificial argument. The earthquake, at the time of the earthquake, people donated several $billion from around the world, including governments. There was a $6 billion relief, rescue and rehabilitation and rebuilding exercise, and that was completed. Could some money have been lost somewhere? That possibility exists anywhere and everywhere. The government, for its part, is ensuring that there is tremendous transparency. The National Disaster Management Authority is putting on its website all possible facts about assistance committed, assistance disbursed, and what it was spent on. We will use other means of doing the same online. And those who do not trust the government are more than welcome to make a contribution to the United Nations or to a non-governmental organization. Nobody has stopped them from doing it. Of course, in case of non-governmental organizations, there is always a factor of overheads, which does not exist with the machinery on ground. Mainly, the political leadership that is in office in Pakistan right now has not had the kind of political support among certain quarters, including the Pakistani media and sometimes even overseas Pakistanis in the United States. And so therefore, it is their political prejudice and bias that is being reflected here. Otherwise, there is no objective reason to say that I will not make a contribution to save the life of a child in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa or in Sindh because my money is going to get misappropriated or misused. That's essentially a callous and a political argument. The good news is that a lot of people are not buying that argument. So while you hear that argument a lot in the media, on ground there are people who are being generous. I think the real reason why the massive outpouring that you saw after Haiti or after the Pakistan earthquake of 2005 has not been repeated is the fact that the number of deaths is low. The human psyche is that when you hear 83,000 people killed, which was the number for the people killed in the earthquake of 2005 in the northern parts of Pakistan, your response is much quicker. Similarly, in case of the Haiti earthquake, it was the large numbers of casualties. It is very interesting that people who criticize the authorities of Pakistan don't realize that the reason why there are lower casualties and fatalities in the earthquake, in the flood of 2010 in Pakistan is because we were able to mobilize parts of our government, like the military, quick enough to ensure that people were taken to safety early. Otherwise, we would have had far more people who would have been drowned or washed away. And in many places where there was possibility of forewarning, there were very successful evacuations. Very significant sized towns were evacuated and lives were saved. But I think the slow response was because the stunning news of thousands of people dying didn't come. So when a tragedy moves slowly, it registers much more slowly than a sudden tragedy that results in large numbers of fatalities.
Following the 2005 earthquake in Pakistan, there were concerns about possible misuse of funds. What is the government doing to ensure that aid gets to people in a timely and transparent manner?
First of all, I do not agree with this concept of constant fear of misuse of funds. I think this comes from a culture of suspicion and lack of trust. I think that there are very few people. Look, as a child I knew that there were people in Pakistan who, even when you went to go for your prayers, there were people who would steal the shoes of people who were praying, you know. So that is something that we've known all along. But I think that by and large, a lot of people use these excuses as excuses for inaction. The fact of the matter is that $6 billion in assistance for the earthquake did result in saving a lot of lives, rebuilding a lot of lives, and the reconstruction of the entire earthquake affected area. And the same is going to happen in case of the floods. Those who are cynical and skeptical, I wish them well and I pray for them. I think that those who have the spirit of bringing change are the people who try to find ways of ensuring transparency but do not allow their cynicism to take control of their hearts and their minds.
Thank you, Ambassador Haqqani, for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here with us today.
Pleasure talking to you.